listener production.
Hey, Tara Cassidy with you, and welcome to The Briefing. A drug that's being hailed life-changing by many due to its ability to combat treatment-resistant depression is about to be made thousands cheaper for those in need.
It's been remarkable. I have gone from being deeply suicidal for the last 30 years, and in the last 2 years, I don't have suicidal ideation anymore.
My chat coming up with a man who says this drug saved his life, as well as a psychiatry expert coming up in the second half of this episode. First though, let's get into the headlines with Chris Spiru this Thursday, the 1st of May.
Morning, Tara, and to you listening, and to the more than 4 million people who have already cast their votes ahead of this Saturday. That includes you, Tara Cassidy. Well done. I salute you. Y'all are out there breaking records. Well done. We're going to kick off today with a quick campaign wrap. While the PM was taken to Canberra to address journalists at the National Press Club yesterday, and Peter Dutton was hitting up key seats in Melbourne, the Greens were officially launching their campaign.
Yes, that's right. Last night they addressed party faithful at an inner Melbourne brewery, outlining their major policies, which includes getting dental into Medicare, universal mental health care with unlimited sessions, wiping student debt and cancelling AUKUS. Their leader Adam Vance says support for the non-majors in this country has never been lower.
1 in 3 people around the country at the moment are not voting for the major parties, and the experts are saying that at this election, it could be as high as 40% of people are saying that they don't want the major parties anymore.
Yeah, and speaking of things the good people of this country do not want anymore, text messages authorised by the Trumpet of Patriots, H. Fong or Harry Fong.
Oh, preach.
The Queensland Senate candidate has had his phone number leaked online in response to the Clive Palmer-backed party continuing to send out hundreds of thousands of unsolicited text messages ahead of this election. Some of the texts read, cut immigration by 80%, forgive student debt, voting One Nation is a vote for the Liberal Party, and you don't need to be welcome to your own country.
Yeah, and the Queensland barrister who's been friends with Palmer since the 70s has told The Guardian that the wave of calls and texts that he received since having his details leaked has killed his phone battery, but added that while he approves and stands by the Trumpet texts, he is not actually personally involved in sending them out.
Yes, and just a word of warning for any briefer out there who is yet to receive these texts, do not say that out loud. Your phone is listening, because the second I complained about not receiving them, I have since been flooded, and it is the worst.
Staying with politics, and the coalition's making a last-ditch effort to secure voters, promising stronger economic management for the country, with their budget costings expected to be released today. Peter Dutton says it would see the Australian economy at least $10 billion better off over the next 4 years, and would trim a further $40 billion in gross debt by axing things like Labor's student debt and electricity transmission plans. Now, Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor says the coalition's plan is economically responsible, will reduce debt and begin budget repair.
Yeah, big calls from the Shadow Treasurer, and big calls, honestly, and promises that we've had from Labor throughout this entire campaign. But it is worth noting that this all comes, of course, after the world's top credit rating agencies have actually said both sides, so Labor and the coalition, their party promises are going overboard in terms of spending. They've said Australia's coveted AAA credit rating could be impacted if we were to go through with either budget and were faced with more economic setbacks or drops in commodity prices.
And a pair of reality TV stars who were facing child abuse and torture-related charges in Queensland can now be named after a suppression order was lifted in court. My Kitchen Rules couple Claudine Umaki-Moo and Anthony Moo, who dubbed themselves the Married Battlers during their season of the Channel 7 cooking show, were slapped with dozens of charges as the series aired in 2023. There were 12 charges, including rape, which Umaki-Moo is yet to stand trial for, while others, including a torture charge, have since been dropped.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, that suppression order was lifted, so that had previously kept media from reporting the pair's identities. It came after Umaki Moo pled guilty to 6 historical common assault offences relating to kicking, hitting and spitting on a child. A number of serious charges against her husband Anthony have also been dropped, but he'll be sentenced for 11 summary offences next month. If this story's raised any issues for you, you can call 1-800-RESPECT.
And Australia's own Queen of Pop, Kylie Minogue, has been honoured for her contribution to Australian music at the APRA Music Awards, which took place in Melbourne last night. Kylie took to social media this morning to share her thanks, saying it was an honour to receive the award and be recognised by her peers, adding, "My love for music is deeper than ever."
Yeah, now Kylie joins Aussie stars like Paul Kelly, Colt Chisel and Midnight Oil in receiving the prestigious gong. Meantime, Aussie punk rockers Amel and the Sniffers took out the coveted Song of the Year for their track, You Should Not Be Doing That.
You're in New York, getting shit on, and they were down in Melbourne saying you should not be doing that.
Now, just quickly while we're talking about Amel and the Sniffers, they have been all over my TikTok of late because they actually played at Coachella last month, and that's where lead singer Amy Taylor, each act, she would actually use the opportunity and the platform to make comments about social and political issues, both internationally and domestically here in Australia.
And I just want to extend my love and support to all the trans people, to all the gay people, to all the black people, to all the immigrants, illegal and legal as well.
Yeah, so not the first time we've seen music stars use their craft to make statements about the world's issues or politics, Midnight Oil being another band that's renowned for it.
And coming back to politics, but only to share with you that Mr. Anthony Albanese has received a huge celebrity endorsement yesterday. Make or break stuff, really, Tara.
Absolutely.
If you didn't catch it on our socials or everywhere, really, convicted felon Netflix's Tiger King, Joe Exotic, has rallied around the PM in the hopes he could hop on a call with Donald Trump to get him released from prison early. The Tiger King was on Brekkie Radio in Sydney yesterday, where he first made the comment.
Everybody, this is Joe Exotic, and I want you to vote for Anthony Albanese to be Prime Minister of Australia. Maybe with a little luck, Mr. Albanese will make that phone call and me and you and George can be neighbours.
And George is, of course, his husband, who we've just found out he's married while behind bars. So he then hopped on the gram posting what appears to be an AI picture of him and the PM to seal the deal, a picture you can check out on our socials at The Briefing Podcast.
Yeah, and Albo was actually asked about it while addressing the press club in Canberra yesterday and quizzed if he had paid for the endorsement.
Joe Exotic from the hit series Tiger King. He's serving a prison sentence for murder and has been convicted of animal abuse. He's also just endorsed you on Instagram. How do you feel about that? Have you ever met him, and has anyone in Labour paid for his endorsement?
Good to see some levity. He's in jail, isn't that the question? I wasn't even aware of all of that, but, you know, I'll let that go through. I think the point of that question was to ask the question rather than to get a serious answer, I hope.
Fair point. And sticking with silly and kooky, Peter Dutton was also quizzed yesterday, and not on celeb endorsements, but whether or not he was in fact Peggy Sue.
Oh, God.
Are you Peggy Sue?
I think there are some people who are trying to be funny and they're not too funny, so I probably won't contribute to that. But
You've got to deny it, Dutto. You've got to deny it.
Yeah.
Scott
Morrison denied the Engadine McDonald's situation.
Oh, that was him on the Carl and Jackie O show yesterday. The viral meme and rumour, which started and has gained a heap of traction online, suggests that Peter Dutton likes to be... I'm going to get these words out on air, Tara Cassidy, that Peter Dutton likes to be pegged. Now, if you don't know anything about this story or where this rumour started, you need to hop back and listen to my deep dive on it. I speak to one of the creators that really fanned the flames when it comes to this rumour mill, but there's more to it. There is some nuance to this story. It's really, really worth a listen. That will be in the show notes.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And look, that brings our headlines to a close for today. Coming up next is my deep dive, looking into a groundbreaking new depression treatment that's saving lives and is now on the PBS. For the first time in 30 years, a new depression treatment is going to be subsidised by the federal government, making it cheaper and easier to access for an estimated 30,000 Australians. Ketamine. From today, the nasal spray form of esketamine is being added to the pharmaceutical benefit scheme for people with treatment-resistant depression, saving some tens of thousands a year. One of the people who's been using the spray for the last 2 years via the Department of Veterans Affairs is Garth Camac, who says it helped him combat his decades-long depression. Garth, thanks so much for joining me on The Briefing. Can you tell me how this new ketamine treatment has impacted your life?
Tara, it's been remarkable. I have gone from being deeply suicidal for the last 30 years and with a revolving door of inpatient stays in hospitals for the last 15 years. As a very young platoon commander in 1993, I was involved in a motor vehicle accident. I had 5 of my men killed, 7 of them seriously injured. I subsequently went to 3 out of 5 funerals. When I medically discharged from the Army in 1995, I built up the courage to speak to the doctor who was giving me my final discharge and said, I've spent the last 12 months drinking so heavily that I throw up most nights. I've been getting in fights. And he reached over the desk and said, well, I hope that gets better, mate, and shook my hand. Thankfully, things have come a great distance since then. And in the last 2 years, and especially the last 18 months, I don't have suicidal ideation anymore. I feel great. My relationships with my family and as a father, I feel proud of myself and I get up gladly and with gratitude every day. And Spravato has played a part in that, along with everything else I've done with counselling and other drugs and being involved with my own healing. But it has really helped and it has been the most profound thing that has changed my life in the last 2 years. And it means that I am still alive. We haven't got my name carved onto a rock somewhere as another dead veteran. But I see this as a real investment in the well-being and welfare of other people. They might, and I hope, will get a response like I have.
You've obviously tried all the types of methods and treatments prior to this point. What happened when you tried Spravato then for the first time?
I found myself back in hospital again. We played around with the normal mix of SSRIs and other drugs and antipsychotics and breathing techniques and mindfulness and all of those things. And my psychiatrist said, hey, we've got this new drug. So when Spravato came up as an option, I jumped at it. So my first interaction with Spravato was as an inpatient, so closely supervised in a supportive environment. So I felt safe. It's an easy treatment. It's a nasal spray. And you can either just lie there with your eyes shut or have headphones on or whatever. And it's created the space for my counselling to work better, for me to function better, take better care of myself. And so I've been doing weekly treatments for nearly 2 years now, and we're starting to look at spacing them out. I'm now at a point where I'm not relying on Spravato each week. So now I'm at a point where I can spread these treatments out and I'm functioning well and feeling good.
Some others have explained getting this treatment a bit like your brain becoming a bit more like a blank canvas or even like a high-pressure power washer on the brain that, just giving people a fresh start. What would you describe the feeling like?
It's been varied. I've had a couple of sessions where I've come away beaming, looking as if I've been able to look behind the curtain and understand how things work and suddenly get some real clarity about my life. I had an out-of-body experience where I went back to the accident site in Malaysia and I could look at everything in real time and had the bird's eye view that I could move around and see everything and go, I couldn't have done anything else. Neither could anyone else. We did the best we could.
Wow.
And it was the first time that I could feel a first bit of pride in what I did to help try to save my mates and to make sense of that situation that it otherwise had always just been nightmares.
What a wonderful outcome, and hopefully other people who try this treatment as well will see the same kind of success. Garth, thank you so much for joining me on the briefing and telling me a bit about your story.
You're very welcome, Tara, and I hope that my experience can be replicated for others.
As well as patients like Garth, experts across the mental health sector say it's a huge win to see the drug added to the PBS, helping those with one of the most stubborn forms of depression. Professor Malcolm Hopwood is Chair of Psychiatry at Ramsay Healthcare in Melbourne and's worked in the sector for over 30 years. Professor, can you tell me how this new type of ketamine treatment actually works?
So the basic idea is it works by boosting a transmitter in the brain called glutamate. That's one that we've never really targeted before in depression, and it seems that different mechanism of action really helps it work in a group of people with hard-to-treat depression, which is a really important group to target.
How many people in Australia do suffer from depression and then separately treatment-resistant depression, and how do the two differ?
Depression affects about 20% of the Australian population at some point in their life. Now, obviously, that's a big range of severity, isn't it? From, relatively mild but still impairing through to very severe. Of all those people with depression, about 40% who seek treatment won't respond to the first few treatments. So 40% to 20% is a lot of people. Depression is the leading cause of disability globally in terms of all health conditions. And a lot of that disability is due to the group of people who don't get better with the first few treatments. It's really tough. And we know if you fall into that group of so-called treatment-resistant depression, there's a higher chance that you'll have recurrences in the future and end up having all sorts of bad outcomes. So a really important group for us to treat well.
What kind of results have you seen already?
So the big trials said that about 50% of people who'd failed 2 or 3 antidepressants would respond to esketamine. So quite a big leap ahead. And I think that's really important. If you're depressed and feeling very negative about things and a few treatments haven't worked, it's going to get incredibly frustrating, isn't it? And really hard to persist and put up with that. So knowing that there's data supporting this and that the odds are relatively good is incredibly important.
And for a patient, are you able to explain what does a standard session look like if you're going in for treatment?
So you go to an approved treatment centre. Most of the times they come, you'll see a doctor and then a nurse will take you to the treatment area. The nasal spray itself is just like the kind of nasal spray many people are familiar with for hay fever, for example. You administer that, and then most people for the next half an hour or so feel in just a slightly dreamy state. It's often been compared to if you have a glass or 2 of wine. You just want to relax, chill out. For most people after that, they recover without incident. Some people feel a little bit tired later in the day. So we recommend after treatment you don't drive yourself home or, that operate heavy machinery kind of warning, depending on what job you do. But that's about it.
And I understand it's been over 30 years since a depression treatment's been added to the PBS. Why is it such a monumental win and why has it taken so long?
Yeah, it's certainly 30 years since we've had anything that operates in a different way get onto the PBS. For a while there we had a series of antidepressants that mainly worked in the brain on serotonin and noradrenaline. And it's really been hard for us to find leaps to new treatments that work in different ways I respect that, we've obviously got to weigh in carefully the cost of new drugs as well. And that's an important consideration for bodies like the PBS. So it's great to now have something new to offer people.
What kind of costs would patients be looking at if this treatment wasn't covered on the PBS?
Yeah, a lot is the short answer. So when you have the treatment, initially twice weekly, then for a maintenance period, if it works weekly, and then fortnightly, a whole course of treatment over 6 months before the drug was subsidised would be well over $20,000 to $25,000. And I'd never talked to a patient about a treatment of that cost before and felt, to be honest, quite uncomfortable doing that. Now, there'll still be a cost, even with subsidy of the drug, for the nurse and the pharmacy. That's around $300 a treatment. But it brings the whole course down to a few $1,000s, nothing like what it was before. Would it be great if that was subsidised eventually as well? Yes, of course. Because depression affects people across the sort of spectrum of socioeconomic status, and we really want this treatment to be available to everyone who potentially benefit. And hopefully we'll get there eventually, but we're a heck of a lot closer now.
And Professor Hopwood, this has been overall a really big win for people both with depression or just those in the mental health space. What else needs to change?
I think for many people, access to treatment still remains a barrier, and that's not helped by stigma. The chances of getting rid of a mental health problem and really removing its influence on a person's life is unsurprisingly easier the earlier we get into treatment. Treatment can be daunting for people, and I think they often feel concerned about what that's going to be like, but I really encourage people to put their hand up, come forward for treatment. It's there and it's worth it. We don't want these problems dominating people's lives.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining me on the briefing.
A pleasure.
That was Professor Malcolm Hopwood and earlier Garth Camac speaking with me about a new ketamine treatment for depression being added to the PBS from today. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Briefing. That's it for now. Remember, you can also check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast and on TikTok and YouTube, search Listener Newsroom. We'll be back in your feed with another ep from 4 p.m. I'm Tara Cassidy. See you next time.
Listener.